Treasure Island. Robert Louis Stevenson. Chapter 1. My name is Jim Hawkins. I have been asked to speak about Treasure Island and our adventures. I will tell the story starting from the period of time in which my father still ran the Bimbo Inn. One day, an old seaman arrived. His name was Billy Bones. He was tall and strong, his hands were rough, and he had a scar on his cheek. He came into our inn, gave a look around, and decided to stay. Billy used to spend the days walking around the bay with his brass spyglass, and then he would spend the evenings sitting near the fire drinking a lot of rum. Sometimes he sang a song, an old sea song, 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. It was a very cold winter. My father was not well at all, and my mother and I had to take care of the inn. One January morning we heard a fall in the living room. Billy was lying on the floor. Dr. Livesey, who had come to see my father, managed to save Billy, but warned him that rum would be his death. At about noon I went to see Billy. He asked me for some rum and I very reluctantly brought it to him. He drank it and demanded to know how long he had to stay in bed. When I told Billy he had to stay for 1 week, he was terrified. "But I can't stay here 1 week. If I don't escape, they will give me the black spot. They want my old chest. I was Flint's first officer and I am the only one who knows the place. Don't tell anybody anything unless they put the black spot on me or you see a seaman with only 1 leg." I thought Billy was talking nonsense because he'd drunk rum. My father died that evening, and because from that moment I had to look after everything, other matters were forgotten. The morning after, Billy was up and drinking rum. A few days later a blind man with a stick arrived. He forced me to take him to Billy. The blind man put something into Billy's hand and went out. It was the black spot. To my surprise, several days later Billy died from a heart attack. My mother and I opened Billy's chest. She wanted to take only the money he owed us. While we were counting, I heard the sound of the blind man's stick. My mother took what she had already counted, and I took some papers. Then we ran away from the inn. We were halfway to the village when we heard some footsteps. We stopped and we saw the blind man and others arrive. They entered and found the dead man, and then they discovered that someone had taken his papers. Just then some soldiers arrived. Everybody escaped, except for the blind man, who was killed in the confusion. I wanted to show the papers to Dr. Livesey, so we went to Mr. Trelawney's house. Dr. Livesey often went there to have a chat with Mr. Trelawney. After telling Dr. Livesey the story, I showed him the papers. These contained a map of an island, indicating where Flint's treasure was buried. Full of excitement, we decided to leave from Bristol by ship and go to that mysterious island. One day we received a letter from Mr. Trelawney. It said, "Everything is settled. I found a beautiful ship called the Hispaniola and a 1-legged cook called Long John Silver. Long John helped me find the crew." I said goodbye to my mother and the next morning left for Bristol. It was decided that we would sail the next day. I also met Silver, who was a tall, strong man, walking with a crutch because one of his legs had been cut off below the knee. I recognized him as the man Billy had spoken about. Everything was now ready for the sea voyage, and we decided to leave. Chapter 2. We went on board the Hispaniola. It was clear that Mr. Trelawney did not get along with Captain Smollett. In fact, the captain was worried and angry, because although the reason for the voyage was meant to be a secret, everybody knew about it. He also did not like the crew, which he had not chosen. To make the captain happier, Trelawney and the doctor agreed to move the powder and arms from their original position near the crew's sleeping place and to keep the map a secret. It was a good voyage. The crew was happy and the morale high. Long John Silver was very keen to me, and I often visited him in the kitchen. He had a parrot called Captain Flint that used to repeat, "Pieces of 8." Pieces of 8. One afternoon, I felt like eating an apple from the barrel kept on deck. The barrel was so big that I climbed into it to take an apple. While I was down there, I heard Silver persuading a man to join them in an act of piracy. Another man arrived. Silver explained his plan. When the treasure is on board, we will deal with the others. I was terrified, and just at that moment, the lookout shouted, "Land!" Everybody was excited. I asked Dr. Livesey to call the captain and Mr. Trelawney, and then to find a reason for sending for me, because I had terrible things to say. When I met up with them, I told them what I had heard. There were only 7 men out of 26 whom we could trust. We decided we had to go on, because it would be too dangerous to go back. We would wait and try to find out if any of the other men were still honest. The next morning, it was very hot, and the men began complaining. They obeyed every order carelessly. There was excitement and something strange about them. The captain decided to let the men go on shore. He thought if they all went, he could control the ship. The captain's offer was eagerly accepted. He said he would fire a gun half an hour before sunset to signal the men on shore to come back on board as soon as possible. Arrangements were made by Silver. 6 men were to stay on board, and the other 13, Silver included, got into the boats. I got in a boat and landed on the beach before the others. I got out and ran to hide near a tree. I heard some people approaching. Tom, one of the honest men, was with Silver. They were quarreling. A crow was heard in the distance. "What's that?" Tom asked Silver. "I think it's Alan," he replied with a smile. Tom asked, "Have you killed Alan? If it's so, kill me too, if you can." So Tom turned his back on the cook and began walking away. Silver threw his crutch, knocking him down, and then, quick as lightning, stabbed him in the back. I was so scared that I got away as quickly and as silently as I could. While I was escaping, I heard steps. It was a man. "My name is Ben Gunn," he said. "I was left here 3 years ago and I've survived by feeding on goats, wild fruit, and shellfish. I haven't spoken to anyone for 3 years. My name is Jim," I said. "If I can get back on board, I'll give you all the food you want." Ben asked me if it was Flint's ship. I told him it was not, but there were some of Flint's men on board and this was a problem. They were planning piracy. "Is there a man with only one leg?" he asked in a low voice. "Yes." "Silver," I said. I told him the whole story, and he told me his. I was on Flint's ship, and one day Flint and 6 of his men took the treasure to the island. Only Flint returned. 3 years later I was on another ship, and when I saw the island I told the others about the treasure. We landed and looked everywhere, but we couldn't find it. So I was left, as punishment, alone on this island. Now we can take the small boat I built and go back on board after dark. Then we heard the ship's gun, although sunset was still distant. "They have begun to fight," I exclaimed. Chapter 3. Dr. Livesey continues the story. Now the story is continued by the doctor. Seeing the impossibility of controlling the ship, Hunter and I decided to go on shore. We reached the stockade marked on the map. While we were admiring not only its strength, meaning that we could defend ourselves easily, but also the fact that there was a spring of clear water, we suddenly heard a terrible death cry. We rushed back to the ship. Hunter brought the boat near the window of the officer's room, and Joyce and I began loading the boat with powder, guns, food, and my equipment. We made 2 journeys from the ship to the shore carrying as many things as possible. On the 3rd trip, Captain Smollett persuaded one of the men to join us. The last journey was the most difficult, because the boat had been loaded too much. All at once the captain exclaimed, "The gun!" In fact, the remaining men were loading it. Trelawney shot one of the 5 men, but then the gun fired. It missed, but the splash made the loaded boat sink. Luckily we were in only a meter of water, so, giving up the load, we rushed toward the stockade. Just then, 7 of the pirates came out of the woods. Everyone fired, and a pirate and Tom Redruth on our side were killed. We finally reached the stockade. All evening the ship's gun kept firing at us but without doing any damage. While the fire continued, the captain noted down, Smollett, captain. Livesey, ship's doctor. Gray, carpenter. Trelawney, owner. Hunter and Joyce, owner's servants. Stores for 10 days, English flag on the longhouse of the Treasure Island. Redruth, killed by the enemies. Jim Hawkins, missing. Just then, Hawkins arrived, safe and sound. Ben Gunn did not want to come immediately to join my friends. So I went alone as soon as the fire stopped. Everybody was worried about the shortage of our supplies. Our only hope was to kill most of the pirates and force them to give up. The next morning, I was woken up by my company's shouts. They said, "A white flag. It's silver." Although they were afraid it was a trap, they agreed to talk. It came out that somebody had killed one of the pirates while they had been drunk the night before. I guessed it was Ben Gunn. Silver wanted the map, but the captain refused, saying that they would not be able to find the treasure or to sail the ship, and promising a fair trial to those who gave up. Long John went out grumbling, fiercely, threatening, "I'll destroy this log house. The men who die will be the lucky ones." Silver disappeared. The captain said, "We will soon be attacked. We are fewer than the pirates, but we have a shelter, so we could beat them." Everyone took up his position. Then the fight began and it was fierce and cruel. Finally the victory was ours. The pirates had lost 5, we only 2. So now we were 5 against 8. The doctor went to look for Ben Gunn. I decided to go and see where Ben's boat was hidden, so I slipped out. I found the boat and I had an idea. If I cut the rope that tied the ship, the Hispaniola would go out to the sea. Then we would not be under threat from the ship's guns. As I got near the ship I could see what was inside. I saw Hans and another man drunkenly fighting with each other. I cut the rope and quickly dropped back into the boat. Then I heard steps, and I understood that they had stopped fighting and realized something was wrong. I lay flat in the boat, fearing for my life. The morning after, I was still in Ben Gunn's little boat at the southwest end of Treasure Island. I couldn't see the Hispaniola anymore. I tried to row to land where the cliffs ended. Suddenly I saw the Hispaniola. It was sailing wildly at the mercy of the wind. I had the impression that nobody was on board. I drifted nearer and managed to get on board, but Ben's boat was destroyed. If I wanted to save my life, it was the Hispaniola or nothing. Chapter 4. I stepped onto the deck. The 2 watchmen, Hans and the other, were surrounded by spots of blood. I thought and hoped they had killed each other, but then Hans moaned and asked for rum. I gave him some and told him I was taking command of the ship. Hans said he would help me if I gave him something for his wound and food and drink. I agreed. The Hispaniola was now sailing easily toward the shore. Hans asked me for wine. I was suspicious, so I watched while he took a knife, which he hid. As we approached the island, I was busier and I forgot the danger. Suddenly I heard a sound, turned around, and saw Hans ready to stab me. I moved quickly and he fell. I took out my pistol but the powder was wet and it could not fire. In the meantime, the Hispaniola struck the sand and went over onto one side. In the confusion I escaped up among the sails where I reloaded. Hans followed me. He threw his knife and hit me in the shoulder. In my pain I fired both pistols. Luckily one of the shots must have sounded Hans, because he cried out and fell into the sea. I quickly left the ship. My only thought was to get to the stockade as soon as possible. When I got there, I entered the log house. Everybody was sleeping in the dark. I stood for a moment, and then Silver's parrot cried out, "Pieces of 8. Pieces of 8. I tried to escape, but someone caught me. The pirates had taken the log house and all the stores. I couldn't see any of my friends. Perhaps they had been killed. I demanded to know where my friends were. Silver began to speak. Yesterday Dr. Livesey came to us with a white flag. He told us that the ship had gone and he wanted to make a bargain with us. At the end we had the log house, the firewood, all the stores, and the map, and your friends went away. I do not know where. The pirates wanted to kill but Silver stopped them. The others went outside to talk. Silver knew he was going to be replaced. When they left, he told me that he would save my life, but I had to defend him and help him not to be hanged once we were in England. The other men arrived and one of them handed Silver the black spot. The pirates blamed Silver for all their problems, but Silver managed to calm them down by showing them the map. The next day, the doctor came to see me. After promising not to escape, I was allowed to speak to him, although Silver was accused of trying to make a separate peace. I told the doctor about the ship and how I had got it. The doctor turned to Silver. "If we manage to get out alive, I'll do everything I can to save you. Keep the boy with you and shout when you need help. I'm going to get help for you. Bye." I was terrified. Silver was now a friend, but we were among enemies. All of them, Silver included, were armed. We went by boat to the mouth of a river, where we landed and began to climb. One of the men cried out. The others went to him. "It's not the treasure," said Morgan. It was a man, but his skeleton is in a strange position. In fact, the man lay straight, with his feet pointing in one direction and his hands pointing the opposite way. Probably, Silver said, he was put in this position to indicate direction. Now it will be easy to find the treasure. Then we heard a voice singing the familiar song, 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. "It's Flint," Mary exclaimed. Everybody was terrified and ready to run, but Silver said, "I wasn't afraid of him when he was alive, and I am not afraid of his spirit now. Besides, that was not Flint's voice. It's Ben Gunn's." Everyone became calmer. And they were not afraid of Ben Gunn whether he was alive or dead. We continued to walk. I was tied to Silver, and sometimes he looked at me and pulled the rope angrily. He felt he was near the treasure, and he had forgotten all his promises in his thirst for riches. The pirates were in front. Suddenly they stopped. We went to them and we saw a big hole, surely not new because the grass had already grown over. The treasure was gone. Everybody was shocked. Silver recovered first and passed me a double-barreled pistol. He had become friendly again, fearing the others' reaction. The pirates seemed ready to kill us. Suddenly we heard 3 gunshots. 2 men were killed. The other 3 ran away as quickly as possible. The doctor, Gray, and Ben Gunn were our rescuers. The doctor told us what had happened. He said, Ben Gunn found the treasure and carried it to a cave in the northeast corner of the island. The next morning, when I saw that the ship was gone, I went to Silver and gave him the map and food. I thought the pirates still had the ship, and we needed it to get home. In this way, while Silver and the pirates were busy, we had a chance to move from the stockade to the cave. Returning to North Bay, we found and boarded the Hispaniola. Everyone wanted very much to go home. The next morning we carried all the treasure on board. Leaving the 3 pirates on the island with some supplies, we sailed for the nearest harbor. When we arrived, Trelawney, the doctor, and I went on shore and had a beautiful evening together. When we returned, Ben Gunn told us Silver had gone, taking a bag of money with him. We were all happy we had gotten rid of him. When we finally arrived at Bristol, we shared the treasure and each of us used his money as he wanted. Smollett retired from the sea. Gray saved his money wisely and became captain of a well-equipped ship. Ben Gunn wasted all his treasure in less than 3 weeks. As for me, I sometimes have nightmares. I dream of the waves and hear the cry, "Pieces of eight. Pieces of eight."